Bom dia, and greetings and warm wishes from Boston, and I really am delighted to be here to welcome you to this third International Symposium on Early Childhood Development. I want to begin on behalf of my colleagues at the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard to thank our partners and acknowledge their important role in the work we've been doing together. The Fundação Maria Cecilia Soto Vigigal, the Medical School at the University of Sao Paulo, INSPER, and the David Rockefeller Center at Harvard University, David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies. This conference is really designed to address some of my favorite topics, innovation and addressing complex social problems. And I'd like to basically say a few words to help kick this symposium off. We all know that improving the life prospects of children across social classes represents a serious challenge to all countries around the world. As we move forward in our policies and our practices, it's becoming very clear that we need new ideas and new strategies to build on the best of what we do and to produce breakthrough outcomes, especially for the most vulnerable children. We at the Center on the Developing Child, along with our colleagues, are very interested in the tremendous promise of the revolution in science that we are living through right now. Advances in neuroscience and molecular biology and genomics, along with the behavioral and the social sciences, provide new insights, new information, new ways of thinking about how we might strengthen our policies and programs. Central to our thinking in this area is the importance of what we call the biology of adversity, which is how does stress and serious disadvantage in the circumstances in which some children grow up, how does that actually get into the body and affect learning, affect behavior, affect physical and mental health? So we're going to start by showing you a brief video that will give you a bit of an understanding of this new concept of what we call toxic stress.
Aprender a lidar com o estresse é uma parte importante do desenvolvimento saudável. Quando vivenciamos a experiência do estresse, o sistema de resposta ao estresse é ativado, o corpo e o cérebro ficam em alerta. A adrenalina toma conta e os batimentos cardíacos aumentam, bem como os níveis de hormônios de estresse. Quando o estresse é aliviado em pouco tempo, ou a criança recebe apoio de um adulto acolhedor, a resposta ao estresse desacelera e o corpo rapidamente volta ao normal. Em situações severas, como abuso e negligência contínuos, ou quando não há um adulto acolhedor para amortecer os impactos do estresse, a resposta ao estresse continua ativada. Mesmo quando não há dano físico aparente, a falta prolongada de atendimento por parte dos adultos pode ativar o sistema de resposta ao estresse. A ativação constante de resposta ao estresse sobrecarrega os sistemas em desenvolvimento, como consequências sérias e duradouras para a criança. Isso é conhecido como estresse tóxico. Ao longo do tempo, ele resulta num sistema de resposta ao estresse permanentemente em alerta. Nas áreas do cérebro dedicadas à aprendizagem e ao raciocínio, as neuroconexões que formam a arquitetura do cérebro são mais fracas e em menor quantidade. A ciência mostra que a ativação prolongada dos hormônios de estresse na primeira infância pode reduzir o número de conexões neuronais nessas regiões importantes do cérebro, num período em que as crianças deveriam estar desenvolvendo conexões novas. O estresse tóxico pode ser evitado se assegurarmos que os ambientes nos quais as crianças crescem e se desenvolvem são acolhedores, estáveis e estimulantes.
So now that you've gotten a little bit of a flavor for what we mean by toxic stress, let me tell you a bit about how we've been using this concept, this very powerful scientific concept, to change our thinking and begin to frame new ways of approaching how we invest in effective policies and programs. And the first thing that's become really clear to us is that there are really two major shifts that we need to start thinking about in our approach to early childhood policy. The first is to recognize that what happens early in life lays the foundation for lifelong health, both physical and mental health, as much as it is about preparing children to succeed in school. And the second proposition is that although most of our programs focus on providing enrichment, information for parents, advice and guidance for adults on how to care for young children, and providing rich learning opportunities for children in center-based programs. There's also a need to balance this enrichment approach with a greater focus on this concept of protection, particularly protecting the developing brain from the consequences of toxic stress, which you just saw vividly illustrated in this video. So moving from the notion of broad shifts in our thinking to specific hypotheses, we in our work in North America have begun to focus on two areas in particular. The first is greater attention to building the capabilities of the adults who care for young children. Obviously this starts with the members of their family, their parents, but also includes adults who work in programs that serve young children, particularly children who are disadvantaged by poverty, exposure to violence, and other serious stresses. And so as we move from thinking about just providing parenting education and building the kinds of capacities and skills that are needed to create a home environment that promotes healthy development, we became very interested in what science calls executive function and self-regulation skills. These are the kinds of skills that involve being able to focus your attention, to plan and monitor and solve problems, to not just live in the moment, but to be oriented toward future planning, impulse control, delayed gratification. These are the kinds of skills that are needed for managing the challenges of raising a young child. It also became clear to us that these are the same skills that are foundational for being able to be more economically productive and to be able to find employment that will pay a sustainable family wage. So our first approach in these hypotheses is beginning to think about how to develop these adult capabilities. Second, at a community level, we're using the science to be more specific and more targeted in the way that we think about a community-based approach to creating an environment that raises healthy children. So thinking about toxic stress as it was described in the video, our new approach to community intervention is to target those specific sources of toxic stress that exist in a given community, and that will vary from community to community. So where there are problems with violence or serious difficulties with substance abuse or high levels of mental health difficulties, particularly depression in mothers, these are areas that a community-based focus needs to address because parents can't deal with these problems on their own. So what I'd like to do now is move toward a focus on the theme of this conference, one of which is innovation, and tell you a little bit about what the culture of innovation means when we bring it into a setting of intervention programs and policies focused on young children. Innovation means an embracing of the importance of taking risks, trying things that may or may not work, creating the environment where it's safe to try new things, where it's safe to fail, and particularly where failure is an opportunity for learning, not something that should be shunned or something that we should be ashamed of. In fact, in the innovation world where things happen, where breakthrough interventions and innovations take place, all of the breakthroughs come after a succession of failures of trying different things. And this notion of a fast cycle for learning requires very rigorous attention to evaluation and measurement, which is another important theme for this conference. So let me conclude my comments by sketching out a model for you of how we bring together the three themes of this conference: innovation, evaluation, and scaling, and apply that to the challenges of improving life outcomes and life prospects for the most vulnerable children, specifically here in our focus in Brazil, although this is an international conference. So this process begins by identifying the challenges. We need to move beyond general statements about the importance of a brighter future for children and get very specific. So what are the challenges? What areas are we focusing on? Early learning and preparation to succeed in school. The ability to develop well-regulated behavior. That's the foundation for good citizenship. The kinds of skills needed to be employable later, and the foundations of lifelong physical and mental health. So once we identify the challenges, we then have to move toward articulating a theory of change. Why do we think these new interventions that we're trying will produce the kinds of outcomes that will move the challenges that we're addressing. This is where science can be very helpful to kind of really refine our thinking and be specific about what is our theory of change that drives the new interventions that we want to try. And then we need hypotheses to drive the development of these interventions. I gave examples a few moments ago about focusing on building adult capabilities, focusing specifically on targeted problems in a community that will vary from one town and one neighborhood to another. And then we move toward this very exciting and demanding process of actually designing new strategies for intervention. And this is where collaboration among scientists and service providers who work in programs on the ground is critically important. Science does not have all the answers. People who provide services do not have all the answers, but together this creates a magical opportunity to develop new ideas and then put them to the test, not being afraid to fail in the beginning, having the freedom and the safety of being able to take risks. And so those new interventions then get tested. And as those interventions are implemented, the people who are providing them, along with the parents who are receiving the services, will observe how well they're working and change them over time. This is not a rigid formula, so that we're continuing to look for opportunities to refine and to shape what we're doing. Everyone has a role to play in terms of providing input into this process. So this refinement over time is a continuous kind of cycle of trying something, measuring it, evaluating, learning, changing what we're doing. And at some point, we begin to develop models that look very promising, that look to be much more effective than anything that we've tried before. And then comes the challenge of replicating those interventions, to taking them to another place, perhaps with a different kind of population, different culture, different ethnic makeup, different educational level of the parents. And then we see, again, this cycle of trying it, modifying it, adapting it to the specific community, to the specific population that we're serving. And then, and only then, when we've demonstrated by an initial trial and a replication that we have a breakthrough innovation, we face the challenge of then taking that to scale and providing larger opportunities for larger populations in a greater diversity of locations. And then each of those gets adapted as we move to a different place. This is the process of innovating in the context of careful evaluation along the way, an overall evaluation, what we call developmental evaluation of the entire process. It's active learning, it's taking chances, it's welcoming opportunities to learn from things that don't work, and it's continuing to move the field further and further beyond what is the best of what we can do right now. So as you think about the material and the presentations and the discussions that will come over the next 2 days, I invite you to see the value of this integrated approach of understanding how to build a culture of innovation, of recognizing the critical importance of rigorous evaluation, and always keeping our eyes on the ultimate goal, which is to take to scale the most effective interventions that we can develop. I've looked at your program. It's a very exciting array of presenters, kind of extraordinary talent and experience. I wish I could be with you in person to participate in this program, but I send you warm wishes and much good hopes for a very exciting conference, and look forward to all of us having an opportunity to work again together in the future to provide all of the supports and use all of our best knowledge to improve life outcomes for all children in Brazil, in the United States, and throughout the world. So enjoy your conference, and thank you very much for this opportunity to welcome you.